I'm going to get started. So I'm recording. And this is week 19 that we're meeting. And it's so lesson 19 is I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. So again, Jesus is emphasizing the impacts of our thoughts. And we have had several lessons about being mindful of what we think. So not only does it impact us, but our thoughts also impacts others, whether we realize it or not. So y'all, I have a question, okay? I want everyone to think about this honestly, okay? It may take you a moment to come up with an answer. So my question is, during a game, during any game, how many of you think that determining a loser and a winner is required to enjoy the game? How many of y'all think that you have to take tally in order to enjoy the game? You got to determine that somebody won and somebody lost. Hey, Charmaine, I'm asking everybody, do you have to have a winner and a loser in order to enjoy a game? So it's one of those questions that you really have to think about. I asked Stanley this question. And he said, yeah, I can enjoy the game, but at the end, I have to know that I got that butt. I got you, son. So, yeah, that was Stanley's philosophical view of competition during the gameplay. So does anybody have anything to offer in terms of if you feel like a winner or loser has to be determined?
Yes, Loretta.
Hi, Greg. What you think?
Yes, I enjoy winners and losers. And I can tie it to spirituality, because at source, everything and nothing. Everything is perfect, right?
Yeah.
We're on planet Earth to experience dualism or boundaries, a contrast. That's the whole purpose of School of Earth. So part of that definition is winners and losers. Not necessarily the definition of winners or losers, just as a measuring bar of contrast. So the answer actually fits in from spirituality.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Okay. So
I know that's not what you want to hear, but
let me give you so let me give an example. Here's what I was thinking. So let's say you and your family are playing a game of charades. Can everybody mute themselves? Because I'm hearing feedback. So let's say we're playing a game of charades, right? So let's visualize charades, right? The gameplay requires the whole family to do all kinds of gestures, movements, you acting out scenes, to provide many opportunities to laugh at each other. Is it really necessary to take a tally of how many points each team scored at the end? Wasn't the real fun in laughing at your tipsy uncle trying to demonstrate how to do a hula hoop or trying to act out being a cheerleader? Wasn't that the real fun? So there is no right or wrong answer here, because it will be different for everyone. Some say it's the competition that makes the game interesting and offers the motivation to try your best. Others may disagree. So, hey, Roxanne. So that's my thing on the game of charades. So competition has been so ingrained in our lives that seldom do we stop to consider its necessity. Some of the most ambitious and successful athletes are those who are determined to go into every event competing with none other than themselves, instead of sizing up someone else on the other team. I would venture to say that we have been heavily conditioned to compete with one another at very young ages in order to solidify the belief in lack and scarcity, to drill in the program that in order for someone to win, someone else has to lose, because, well, we can't have multiple winners running around all over the place. So the universe is incredibly expansive. This planet provides and produces more than enough food and water to feed the whole world over. It is the belief in lack that motivates people to hoard more than what they need and take from others. I had a special request from someone in a group to talk about competition and abundance. So, of course, I went straight to my favorite book, Conversations with God. I'm going to be reading from book 1 and book 3. I had another lesson planned for today, but I decided to teach this one because it builds on what we talked about last week when we talked about giving to another so that you may have what you give. So I wanted to start out at the very beginning in Conversations with God, where God talks about asking for what we want. And again, Conversations with God books 1 through 3 are on YouTube to listen to. I actually listened to a little bit of it on YouTube this weekend, and I love how God's voice interchanges from both male and female, again, demonstrating that God cannot be pigeonholed into the traditional sense of just being this and not that. So I'm starting on page 11, and this is going to build on which I spoke about before, that in order to receive something, do not tell God that you want it, but that you choose it, and thank God in advance for that which you're asking for. So I'm going to start on page 11. It says, so Neil is asking God, do you mean that I cannot ask for anything I want? Are you saying that praying for something actually pushes it away from me? And so God says, this is a question which has been asked through the ages and has been answered whenever it has been asked. Yet you have not heard the answer or will not believe it. The question is answered again in today's terms and today's language. Thusly, you will not have that for which you ask, nor can you have anything you want. This is because your very request is a statement of lack. And you're saying you want a thing only works to produce that precise experience, wanting, in your reality. The correct prayer is therefore never a prayer of supplication. Supplication means to beg or to ask. So he says it's never a prayer of supplication, but a prayer of gratitude. When you thank God in advance for that which you choose to experience in your reality, you in effect acknowledge that it is there in effect. Thankfulness is thus the most powerful statement to God, an affirmation that even before you ask, I have answered. Therefore, never supplicate, appreciate. So when I read this, I thought, wow, the synchronicities of today's lesson is incredible, because my Course in Miracles lesson for today was, I thank my Father for his gifts to me. So it was about gratitude. And I also had a friend call me today and ask me a question about poverty and abundance. So as always, the synchronicities are present. But I'm going to continue. So Neil says, but what if I am grateful to God in advance for something and it never shows up? That could lead to disillusionment and bitterness. And so God says gratitude cannot be used as a tool with which to manipulate God, a device with which to fool the universe. You cannot lie to yourself. Your mind knows the truth of your thoughts. If you are saying, thank you, God, for such and such, all the while being very clear that it isn't there in your present reality, you can't expect God to be less clear than you and so produce it for you. God knows what you know, and what you know is what appears as your reality. So Neil says, but how then can I be truly grateful for something I know is not there? And so God says, faith. If you have but the faith of a mustard seed, you shall move mountains. You come to know it is there because I said it is there, because I said that even before you ask, I shall have answered, because I said and have said to you in every conceivable way, through every teacher you can name, that whatsoever you shall choose, choosing it in my name, so shall it be. So God is basically saying, have faith and just be grateful and thank God in advance. And we're gonna do this collectively after this lesson, how to do that. So now we are going to talk about our belief in competition. So our need to compete with others and compare ourselves with other people. Where does this come from? I'm going to read from pages 18 to 20, where it talks about what fear does, how love and fear are different. So it says every action taken by human beings, and we've talked about this, is based in love or fear, not simply those dealing with relationships. Decisions affecting business, industry, politics, religion, the education of your young, the social agenda of your nations, the economic goals of your society, choices involving war, peace, attack, defense, aggression, submission, determinations to covet or give away, or to save or to share, to unite or to divide. Every single free choice you ever undertake arises out of one of the only two possible thoughts there are: a thought of love or a thought of fear. He goes on to say, fear is the energy which contracts, closes down, draws in, runs, hides, hoards, harms. Love is the energy which expands, opens up, sends out, stays, reveals, shares, heals. Fear wraps our body in clothing. Love allows us to stand naked. Fear clings to and clutches all that we have. Love gives all that we have away. Fear holds close. Love holds dear. Fear grasps. Love lets go. Fear rankles. Love soothes. Fear attacks, and love amends. Every human thought, word, or deed is based in one emotion or the other. You have no choice about this because there is nothing else from which to choose, but you have free choice about which of these to select. So Neil says, you make it sound so easy. And yet in the moment of decision, fear wins more often than not. Why is that? And so God says, you have been taught, and this talks about why we tend to compete. He says, you have been taught to live in fear. You have been told about the survival of the fittest and the victory of the strongest and the success of the cleverest. Precious little is said about the glory of the most loving. And so you strive to be the fittest, the strongest, the cleverest in one way or another. And if you see yourself as something less than this in any situation, you fear loss. For you have been told that to be less is to lose. And so, of course, you choose the action fear sponsors, for that is what you have been taught. Yet I teach you this: when you choose the action love sponsors, then will you do more than survive. Then will you do more than win. Then will you do more than succeed. Then will you experience the full glory of who you really are and who you can be. To do this, you must turn aside the teachings of your well-meaning but misinformed worldly tutors and hear the teachings of those whose wisdom comes from another source. There are many such teachers among you, as always there have been, for I will not leave you without those who will show you, teach you, guide you, and remind you of these truths. Yet the greatest reminder is not anyone outside yourself, but the voice within you. This is the first tool that I use because it is the most accessible. The voice within is the loudest voice with which I speak because it is the closest to you. It is the voice which tells you whether everything else is true or false, right or wrong, good or bad, as you have defined it. It is the radar that sets the course, steers the ship, guides the journey, if you but let it. It is the voice which tells you right now whether the words you are reading and the words that you're hearing are of love or words of fear. By this measure, can you determine whether they are words to heed or words to ignore? So God is basically saying fear motivates us to compete with others, to size each other up. And I want to be clear that every person on this planet plays a unique role in the specific light that they share with the universe. We are all on journeys that are unique to our soul's plan to experience and create the things we wanted to in this incarnation. We have no idea what we're doing today that is going to build and enable us to do what we need to do tomorrow. We could be in a job that we are not crazy about today, but in spite of our best efforts, we cannot move on from that job. Well, what is the universe saying? Consider that there may be a skill that you are acquiring from that job right now that will assist you in what you are destined to do tomorrow. And until you gain that skill, you cannot move on to something else. To compare yourself to where another person is exhausting and insane because you have no idea the road that other person has been on and is going. You have no idea the path their soul has carved out to get them to a specific outcome. And many times, neither do they. Anytime you become aware that you are comparing yourself to another, recognize that you are in the energy of fear. And fear causes suffering because of the reasons we just read about what fear does. Decide to return to that which you are made of, love, and that you are exactly where you are supposed to be in this moment. So now I'm going to read chapter 11 of Conversations with God, book 1. And I love how Neil asks the questions that we want to know. He cuts straight to the chase. He says, so my next question then, he says, why can't I ever seem to attract enough money in my life? Am I destined to be forever scripting and scraping? What is blocking me from realizing my full potential regarding money? And God says, the condition is manifested not just by you, but by a great many people. So basically, God is saying, this isn't just you. A lot of people have this same experience of struggling with money. So Neil says, everyone tells me it's a problem of self-worth, a lack of self-worth. I've had a dozen New Age teachers tell me that lack of anything is always traceable to lack of self-worth. And God says that is a convenient simplification. In this case, your teachers are wrong. You do not suffer from a lack of self-worth. Indeed, your greatest challenge all your life has been to control your ego. Some have said it's been a case of too much self-worth. And so Neil is like, oh, well, here I am. I'm embarrassed and chagrined again, but you are right. And so God says, you keep saying you're embarrassed and chagrined every time I simply tell the truth about you. Embarrassment is the response of a person who still has an ego, who still has an ego investment in how others see him. Invite yourself to move past that. Try a new response. Try laughter. So I love that. So God is like, don't be embarrassed every time I make an awareness of something about you. You know, try humor. So Neil says, okay. And so God says, self-worth is not your problem. You are blessed with an abundance of it. Most people are. You all think very highly of yourself, as rightly you should. So self-worth is for the great mass of the people, is not the problem. So Neil's like, okay, so what is the problem? And God says the problem is lack of understanding of the principles of abundance, together, usually with a massive misjudgment about what is good and what is evil. Let me give you an example. So God says, you carry a thought around that money is bad. You also carry a thought around that God is good. Bless you. Therefore, in your thought system, God and money do not mix. And we've talked about this, about having a sponsoring thought about money, that we've been conditioned to think that money is bad, money is evil. So God is addressing that. So Neil says, well, in a sense, I guess that's true. That is how I think. So God says, this makes things interesting, because this then makes it difficult for you to take money for any good thing. I mean, if a thing is judged very good by you, you value it less in terms of money. So the better something is, i.e. the most worthwhile, the less money it's worth. You are not alone in this. Your whole society believes this. So your teachers make a pittance and your strip teasers make a fortune. Your leaders make so little compared to sports figures that they feel they have to steal to make up the difference. Your priests and your rabbis live on bread and water while you throw coins at entertainers. Think about it. Everything on which you place a high intrinsic value, you insist must come cheaply. The lonely research scientist seeking a cure for AIDS goes begging for money, while the woman who writes a book on 100 new ways to have sex and creates tapes and weekend seminars to go with it makes a fortune. This having it all backwards is a propensity with you, and it stems from wrong thoughts. The wrong thought is your idea about money. You love it, and you say it is the root of all evil. You adore it, and yet you call it filthy lucre. You say that a person is filthy rich. And if a person does become wealthy doing good things, you immediately become suspect. You make it that wrong. So a doctor had better not make too much money or had better learn to be discreet about it. And a minister, whoa, she really better not make lots of money, assuming you'll even let a she be a minister. And there'll surely be trouble. You see, in your mind, a person who chooses the highest calling should get the lowest pay. And so Neil says, and God says, yes, is right. You should think about that because it is such a wrong thought. And so Neil says, I thought there was no such thing as wrong or right. And God says, there isn't. There's only what serves you and what does not. The terms right and wrong are relative terms, and I use them that way when I use them at all. In this case, relative to what serves you, relative to what you say you want, your money thoughts are wrong thoughts. Remember, thoughts are creative. So if you think money is bad, yet you think yourself good, well, you can see the conflict. God is going to continue with this. And I'm going to address what he continues with, but I wanted to check in with everybody. Hey, Deshana. Hey, Evelyn. So I wanted to check in with everybody about what I've read so far about how we feel about money. We all have heard that, right? That we feel like money is evil, and we have all used the term filthy rich. And when you think about it, there's so much weight in that statement. Why does I just had that conversation with my daughter the other day. We were looking at something on TV, and they went to a couple who were rich, and she was like, I feel like they're not as authentic because they're rich. I'm like, why? People can't be authentic because they're rich. Because one day you want to be rich, right? So he's addressing this idea that we frown on wealth. And if you frown on wealth, the universe truly is confused, because the universe knows that we are good, and the universe knows that we are God. So it doesn't know what to do with this. It's like, okay, she's good, she's God's daughter, or he's God's son, but they think that money is bad. And why would I give them something that's bad? So yes, Deshana, I see your comment, and I had really wanted to, you wanted to do this lesson. And so, yes, so does anybody have anything to offer? You don't have to. I just wanted to check in with y'all because God continues. So I'm gonna continue. So Neil says, how can I change the way I think? The way I think about something is the way I think about something. My thoughts, my attitudes, my ideas were not created in a minute. I have to guess they are the result of years of experience, a lifetime of encounters. You are right about the way I think about money, but how do I change that? So God says, this could be the most interesting question in the book. The usual method of creation for most human beings is a three-step process, and we've talked about this, involving thought, word, and deed or action. First comes thought, the formative idea, the initial concept. Then comes the word. Most thoughts ultimately form themselves into words, which are often then written or spoken. This gives added energy to the thought, pushing it out into the world where it can be noticed by others. Then he says, finally, in some cases, words are put into action, and you have what you call a result, a physical world manifestation of what all started with a thought. Everything around you in your man-made world came into being in this way, or some variation of it. All three creation centers were used. But now comes the thought, how to change a sponsoring thought. Yes, that is a very good question and a very important one. For if humans do not change some of their sponsoring thoughts, a sponsoring thought is the thought behind the thought behind the thought. So it's like that initial thought that you feel about something. He says that for if humans do not change some of their sponsoring thoughts, humankind could doom itself to extinction. The most rapid way to change a root thought or sponsoring idea is to reverse the thought, word, deed process. So Neil says, explain that. Explain that for me. So God says, do the deed that you want to have the new thought about. Then say the words that you want to have your new thought about. Do this often enough and you'll train the mind to think a new way. And Neil says, train the mind. Isn't that like mind control? Isn't that just mental manipulation? And God says, do you have any idea how your mind came up with the thoughts it has now? Do you not know that your world has manipulated your mind to think as you do? Wouldn't it be better for you to manipulate your mind than for the world to? And this is what we talk about in our study in A Course in Miracles, how we are deprogramming our minds out of the conditioned way that we have been made to think, so that we can reprogram ourselves to think the right way. So God continues, he said, would you not be better off to think the thoughts you want to think than those of others? Are you not better armed with creative thoughts than with reactive thoughts? Yet your mind is filled with reactive thought that springs from the experience of others. Very few of your thoughts spring from self-produced data, much less self-produced preferences. Your own root thought about money is a prime example. Your thought about money, the thought is it is bad, runs directly counter to your experience. It is great to have money. So he's saying your thought about it that is bad conflicts with your experience with money. We enjoy having money. So you have to run around and lie to yourself about your experience in order to justify your root thought. You are so rooted in this thought, it never occurs to you that your idea about money may be inaccurate. So now what we are up to is coming up with some self-produced data. And that is how we change a root thought and cause it to be your root thought, not another's. You have one more root thought about money, by the way, which I've yet to mention. So God is like, you have another root thought about money too. And so Neil is like, what's that? And God said that there's not enough. In fact, you have this root thought about just about everything, that there's not enough money, that there's not enough time, there's not enough love, there's not enough food, water, compassion in the world. Whatever there is that's good, there's just not enough. This race consciousness of not enoughness creates and recreates the world as you see it. So Neil says, okay, so I have two root thoughts, sponsoring thoughts to change about money. And God says, oh, at least two. I mean, probably more. Let's see. Money is bad. Money is scarce. Money may not be received for doing God's work. That's a big one with you. Money is never given freely. Money doesn't grow on trees, which in fact it does. Money corrupts. And so Neil says, I see I've got a lot of work to do. And God says, yes, you do. And if you're not happy with your present money situation, on the other hand, it's important to understand that you're unhappy with your present money situation because you're unhappy with your present money situation. And so Neil says, okay, what did you mean I'm unhappy with my money situation because I'm unhappy with my money situation? And so God says, you are what you think you are. It's a vicious circle when the thought is a negative one. You've got to find a way to break out of the circle. So much of your present experience is based on your previous thought. Thought leads to experience, which leads to thought, which leads to experience. This can produce constant joy when the sponsoring thought is joyous. It can and does produce continual hell when the sponsoring thought is hellacious. The trick is to change sponsoring thought. I was about to illustrate how to do that. So God is about to illustrate to Neil. So Neil says, go. So God says, thank you. So God says, the first thing to do is reverse the thought, word, deed paradigm. Do you remember the old adage, think before you act? And Neil says, yes. So God says, well, forget that. If you want to change a root thought, you have to act before you think. And so now, and I've given this example before, but now I'm going to read the example that God gives Neil, which is powerful. So God says, for example, you're walking down the street and come across an old lady begging for quarters. You realize she's a bag lady and is living day to day. You instantly know that as little money as you have, you surely have enough to share with her. Your first impulse is to give her some change. There's even a part of you that's ready to reach in your pocket for a little folding money, a 1 or even a 5. What the heck? Make it a grand moment for her. Light her up. So then thought comes in. What, are you crazy? We've only got $7 to get us through the day. You want to give her a 5? So you start fumbling around for that one. Thought again. Hey, come on. Hey, come on. You don't have that many of these that you can just give them away. Give her some coins, for heaven's sake, and let's get out of here. Quickly, you reach into the other pocket to try to come up with some quarters. Your fingers feel only nickels and dimes. You're embarrassed. Here you are, fully clothed, fully fed, and you're going to nickel and dime this poor woman who has nothing. You try in vain to find a quarter or two, or there's one deep in the fold of your pocket. But by now you've walked past her, smiling wanly, and it's too late to go back. She gets nothing. You get nothing either. Instead of the joy of knowing your abundance and sharing, you now feel as poor as the woman. Why didn't you just give her the paper money? It was your first impulse, but your thought got in the way. Next time, decide to act before you think. Give the money, go ahead. You've got it. And there's more where that came from. That's the only thought which separates you from the bag lady. You're clear there's more where that came from, and she doesn't know that. When you want to change a root thought, act in accordance with the new idea you have, but you must act quickly, or your mind will kill the idea before you know it. I mean that literally. The idea, the new thought, the new truth will be dead in you before you've had a chance to know it. So act quickly when the opportunity arises. And if you do this often enough, your mind will soon get the idea. It will be your new thought. And so Neil says, oh, I just got something. Is that what's meant by the new thought movement? And God says, if not, it should be. New thought is your only chance, is your only real opportunity to evolve, to grow, to truly become who you really are. Your mind is right now filled with old thoughts. Not only old thoughts, but mostly someone else's old thoughts. It's important now, it's time now to change your mind about some things. This is what evolution is all about. So again, I've read this story before about doing something before you allow your thought or your ego to talk you out of it. This also builds on what we talked about last week about giving something so that you can have it. This is the same concept. Sometimes what you give is resources, but sometimes you give love. Sometimes you give presence, Christ consciousness, which is just as powerful. So does anybody have any impressions on what I just read before I move on? I'm going to go to Conversations with God, book 3. And I'm about to end off with that. I am going to pages 20 through 26. So God tells Neil to know what you know, act as if you do. And so Neil says, you mentioned something about that in book 1 also. And God says, yes, a good place to start here would be to recap what's gone before in the previous teaching. And you just happen to be asking the right question. So God says in book 1, we talked about, and that's the book I just read from, we talked about the be, do, have paradigm and how most people have it reversed. Most people believe if they have a thing, more time, more money, love, whatever, then they can finally do a thing. Write a book, take up a hobby, go on vacation, buy a home, undertake a relationship, which will allow them to be a thing, happy, peaceful, content, or in love. So God says, in actuality, they are reversing the be, do, have paradigm in the universe as it really is, as opposed to how you think it is. Havingness does not produce beingness, but the other way around. First, you be the thing called happy, or knowing, or wise, or compassionate, or whatever. Then you start doing things from this place of beingness. And soon you discover that what you're doing winds up bringing you the things you've always wanted to have. The way to set this creative process, and that's what this is, the process of creation into motion, is to look at what it is you want to have. Ask yourself what you think you would be if you had that. Then go right straight to being. In this way, you reverse the way you've been using the be, do, have paradigm. In actuality, set it right and work with rather than against the creative power of the universe. So this is a way to work with the creative power of the universe rather than against it. He says, here's a short way of stating this principle. In life, you do not have to do anything. It is all a question of what you are being. This is one of the 3 messages I will touch on again at the end of our dialogue. I will close the book with it. For now, and to illustrate this, think of a person who just knows that if he could only have a little bit more money, a little bit more time, a little more love, he'd truly be happy. And so Neil says he does not get the connection between his not being very happy right now and his not having the time, money, or love he wants. And God says, yes, that's right. On the other hand, the person who is being happy seems to have time to do everything that's really important, all the money that's needed, and enough love to last a lifetime. And Neil says he finds he has everything he needs to be happy by being happy to be with, to begin with. And God says, exactly. Deciding ahead of time what you choose to be produces that in your experience. And Neil says, to be or not to be, that is the question. And God says, precisely. Happiness is a state of mind. And like all states of mind, it reproduces itself in physical form. There's a statement for a refrigerator magnet. All states of mind reproduce themselves. So Neil says, but how can you be happy to begin with, or be anything you are seeking to be, more prosperous, for instance, or more loved, if you are not having what you think you need in order to be that? So God says, act as if you are, and you will draw it to you. What you act as if you are, you become. And Neil says, in other words, fake it until you make it. And God says something like that. Yes, only you can't really be faking. Your actions have to be sincere. Everything you do out of sincerity, or the benefit of the action is lost. This is not because I want reward you. This is not because I want reward you. God does not reward and punish, as you know. But natural law requires the mind, body, and spirit to be united in thought, word, and action. for the process of creation to work. You cannot fool your mind. If you are sincere, if you are insincere, your mind knows it. And that's that. You've just ended any chance that your mind can help in the creative process. You can, of course, create without your mind. It's just a great deal more difficult. You can ask your body to do something your mind doesn't believe. And if your body does it long enough, your mind will begin to let go of its former thought about it and create a new thought. Once you have a new thought about a thing, you're well on your way to creating it as a permanent aspect of your being rather than something you're just acting out. This is doing things the hard way. And even in such instances, the action must be sincere. Unlike what you can do with people, you cannot manipulate the universe. So here we have a very delicate balance. The body does something in which the mind does not believe, yet the mind must add the ingredient of sincerity to the body's action for it to work. So Neil says, how can the mind add sincerity when it does not believe in what the body is doing? And God says, by taking out the selfish element of personal gain. And Neil says, how? So God says, the mind may not be able to sincerely agree that the actions of the body can bring you that which you choose, but the mind seems very clear that God will bring good things through you to another. Therefore, whatever you choose for yourself, give to another. And Neil says, would you say that again, please? And God says, of course, whatever you choose for yourself, give to another. If you choose to be happy, cause another to be happy. If you choose to be prosperous, cause another to prosper. If you choose more love in your life, cause another to have more love in theirs. Do this sincerely, not because you seek personal gain, but because you really want the other person to have that. And all the things you give away will come to you. So Neil says, why is that so? How does that work? And God says, the very act of your giving something away causes you to experience that you have it to give away. Since you cannot give to another something you do not now have, your mind comes to a conclusion, a new thought about you, namely that you must have this, or you could not be giving it away. This new thought then becomes your experience. You start being that. And once you start being a thing, you've engaged the gears of the most powerful creation machine in the universe, your divine self. Whatever you are being, you are creating. The circle is complete, and you will create more and more of that in your life. It will be made manifest in your physical experience. So Neil goes on to say, like, wow, you know what, I've experienced it. I remember, I thought I had no food in the fridge, and I saw a couple who were like sitting on the bench, and they were cold, and I gave them my blanket, and I invited them over my house, and I pulled out everything out of the refrigerator. And amazingly, it was like the best meal. So he was like, I've experienced what you're talking about. So I'm gonna end right there. So that which we give, we truly have and are. Many, many times we wait to be at a certain place before we decide we want to act on something. We feel as if we have to be fixed or perfect before we can proceed on sharing something with others. This reminds me of when I started doing these sessions. A dear friend of mine who was a medium told me that Jesus wanted me to teach the lessons of A Course in Miracles. And after being completely honored, I thought, who am I that I could teach these lessons? I mean, there are people who have studied this book for many, many years of their lives. And though I've studied it, I've not studied it nearly as long as they have. You know, then my mind began to catalog my credentials and certifications and, you know, that I've acquired. And I knew that God didn't care about any of that none of that is important. That if I want to have a thing called wisdom, that I be it now and start doing that which I choose, such as teaching, so that I can have the wisdom right now, be, do, have. And this has been the most incredible experience I've had doing this. And I'm so glad that my ego did not convince me to wait and get more years of study before I decided to teach. So I encourage everyone here that if there's something that you're struggling with, if there's something that you want more of, give it, be it, do it. If you feel that you want more love in your life, be more loving. The universe will respond to your generosity in spirit, and you will receive that which you crave. If you want more money, give it if you so choose. This is not a matter of right and wrong. This is a matter of changing your sponsoring thought about a thing. So if you give money, you're telling the universe, I understand that more will come. Now, please understand that this is not a mandate about giving money every time you see someone in need. This is not what this is. If you decide to not give money, pray for that person in need. Pray that the universe will bless them with abundance. And your prayer is a demonstration of love that they will feel in a very real way, and that energy will come back to you. Also, it's important to be careful that we're not believing the lie from the ego that our happiness resides in having more of anything. We're constantly bombarded by ads and commercialism to make us think if we only had this or that, then we would be happy. Then we would be living our best life. Be sure that we are rich in those things that the eye cannot see. For those are the things that will last and cannot be destroyed. So, so are there any comments, questions, feedback, revelations? Anybody want any more information? Hey, Deshana.
Hey, I learned a lot, and that's why I'm saying I need to re-watch this session.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you talked about our egos,
Mm-hmm.
talked about being givers, and like I think the biggest message that I received is that we really do create our own realities with what we believe. It starts from what we believe, and it's not because we're not perfect enough or anything like that. We can choose in the moment to change the way that we feel. And I know last week I had this feeling where my mind was way more powerful than me. And I remember taking a second to verbally say like, oh no, I am God personified, like he is in me. So I can tell my mind to stop. And so hearing what you're saying, it reminds me that I can tell myself other things and it will come to pass because I have that power within me. So I'll definitely be rewatching to make sure I journal the lessons that you talked about.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. We are the drivers. I always tell people we are the drivers of our boat. You can have many passengers. You got this ego voice that's critical. You got that ego voice back there that's always saying something negative, but you are the one that's driving that car or that boat or that vehicle. Um, and I love that you said that, Deshauna, that you are higher than your mind. You're the space that allowed the thoughts in your mind to even exist. So I love that. Yes. Let's start out by being that thing that which we want to have. So yes, yes, yes. If nobody else has anything, I'm going to go to the meditation. And the meditation is just really a demonstration of how we can manifest that which we choose, not want, choose. So real quick, this is not going to be long because it's after 7. So let's practically do this right now. Let's close our eyes. So right now, I want everyone to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, let us all think of the abundance we have around us right now. That abundance can be in the form of people who support and love us. If you can think about your parents, your siblings, your children, your friends, that is a resource from God. That is an abundance. Or you can think about your abundance in terms of the homes we live in, the abundance in terms of the income we make, no matter how small or large, that the universe nurtures us right now. You can experience abundance in your talents, in your wisdom. There's no such thing as not enoughness when it comes to God. If you believe that God cannot produce enough, all you have to think of to correct that thought, and let's think of this thing right now. Consider the many, many parts that God has divided herself into. Think of how many people that are on this planet alone. Think about the billions that are here now in physical form. Think about the many, many skin colors, the different nationalities, cultures, and subcultures, the different hair colors and textures, the different languages and dialects. I mean, wow. Was there an end to God creating himself into many, many parts? This is how expansive God is. Now think for a moment that this just includes those of us who are in physical form on this planet. This does not even begin to calculate those beings who are in other dimensions that we can not see, such as extraterrestrials or beings in spirit forms, angels, archangels, our spirit guides, our loved ones who have transitioned to the other side. Think about how numerous in number, how creative God is, how much of the energy of more God is in touch with. God resonates with the energy of more. He understands and enjoys more. Now, think of that which you choose to have more of. Right now, everyone, think of that one thing that you choose to have more of right now. The thing, the resource of which, as God's son or daughter, that you choose to experience more of, because the universe is expansive and it multiplies. So think of that thing right now, whether it be physical health, better health, more money, wisdom, more talents, romance, confidence, peace. Think of the thing that you choose more of right now. Now, consider the measure of which you have it now. So if you choose you want more money, then think of that, the money that you have created thus far. Don't think of how small or large it is. Just think of what you've attracted to yourself thus far. Okay? Without the story of lack that the ego has laid on top of it. Think of what God has given you now in this moment. If you choose better health, think of those times when you have had freedom from discomfort. If you choose peace and freedom from anxiety, think of those moments when you have experienced peace. Those moments at the park or the beach when you tapped into the calm of nature or during meditation. Think of what you have now. So now as you breathe that in, express to God gratitude for that which you have. This thing that you hold in your mind that you choose to have more of, that you recognize the measure of which you have it now. Silently thank Source for blessing you with what you have in this moment. Now, as you express your gratitude, speak more of that very thing in your life. Avoid saying that you want more of it, because we've already acknowledged that we already have it. We already have it. So tell God, I choose more of this thing. More love, more peace, more joy, more resources, more. Now tell God, thank you in advance, because you know that it has already been done. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Now I want us to go a step further. Now I want you to imagine yourself having more of that thing that you choose. In this moment, experience it in your body. Visualize it in your mind's eye. Experience yourself having an abundance of that thing that you choose more of. Visualize having more of that which you choose. How does it feel? How does it look? What are you doing? Experience that right now in your mind's eye, having an abundance of that thing that you choose. Bring it into existence right now in your mind's eye, in your body. Allowing yourself to experience that which you know that God has blessed you with. Because your very choice to have it, your very desire, comes from your spirit. There's nothing wrong with choosing more. It takes nothing away from others for you to have more. There's plenty for everyone. You only need to create it. And that is what you are doing right now by clarifying your minds from fear to love, from lack to abundance. Dispel all of the false beliefs that you have about money and the desires of your heart. Think a new thought about it. It is your birthright to experience joy and abundance in this physical form. Now, as we begin to open our eyes, remember to be that which you choose more of. Be happy, be loving, be, do, have. And you would create more for yourself many, many times over. So that's all I have, everyone. So that's it. Does anybody have any comments, questions, feedback? Welcome back, Roxanne. I'm so grateful to hear.
Thank you. I'm just sitting here thinking about what you just said, how you wrapped it up. Be that which you choose more of. I'm going to keep that in my head for the remainder of this week, because that's so important. Like when they say speaking things into existence, like that's critical. So I'm going to hold on to those words.